these are some common words and phrases associated with weaken questions. So obviously, weaken, calling into question, the strongest logical counter, undermine, casting doubt, or what makes the argument incomplete. I would say the most common ones are weaken and undermine. Those are likely the biggest, but calls into question, casting doubt also will be describing weakened questions in particular. And you're widening that gap between evidence and conclusion. Now, ways to weaken an argument. Promoting alternative possibilities or explanations. That's generally what we were doing with that particular example with the bag at the bar. We could also be denying the evidence's relevance to the conclusion. So we could be saying that evidence, while technically true, isn't really that important or that useful to serve the purpose of weakening the argument. So we could say it just doesn't really matter. Attacking the evidence's validity. For example, if it's based upon a study or a survey, we could say that's not properly conducted. So they used a biased sample, they used leading questions, there was no control group, the survey or study simply wasn't conducted well. That would be saying, well, technically they did survey 100 people or 1,000 people, but if the questions were biased, that problematizes the survey. And that could just give us more evidence that might attack the conclusion in some way. So these are different things you could be thinking about when you're looking to pre-phrase an argument. In particular, if you see a study or a survey, I would be thinking about that third category there, attacking the validity of the study or survey, the way in which it was conducted. Now, common question I get is about whether the new information is valid or if it's true. And the question stem will say which one of the following, if true, most weakens the argument or most calls into question or most casts doubt. And so they're opening the door to new information. Doesn't matter how strong it is, as long as it gets the job done. So it could be as extreme as you want, just like with strengthening questions, just like with sufficient assumption questions. They're opening the door to that new information. The question is simply, does that get the job done? Does that achieve the task at hand? Another example, you may have seen me use this before, but I'm using it, in fact, because it's so familiar to many of you. We should eat at that restaurant. After all, it has 5 stars on Yelp. So I'm not going to have you play the guessing game because many of you have seen this before, but if we problematize it by saying the Yelp reviews are known to be biased and unreliable, that casts doubt on the argument above. It problematizes it, it undermines it. And in a way, the 5-star Yelp reviews are like a survey, right? They're saying we surveyed lots of restaurant goers and this is the general average rating they gave it. But what if they're biased typically? What if they're all friends and family of the owner, or they're enemies of the owner, or they're people who just have really strong opinions? That could cast doubt in some way. So it says that this group that we're surveying is not really a representative group, so we shouldn't trust that. Therefore, the 5-star average doesn't necessarily mean we should eat at that restaurant. And then strengthen is the flip side. So if we say that those Yelp reviews are actually filtered for bias, so they're perfectly reliable, that suggests, after all, that 5-star Yelp rating actually means something and does provide evidence to suggest we should eat at that restaurant. So just some space to play there. And of course, you can also turn this into a resolve the paradox question. We could say a restaurant has a 5-star Yelp rating. However, we're saying we shouldn't eat there. What's wrong with, what's potentially problematic about that idea? A 5-star rating, but we shouldn't eat there. What would clarify that? Well, if we knew that the Yelp reviews were biased and unreliable, that would help to explain why we shouldn't eat somewhere even though it had a good Yelp rating. So there are lots of ways we could mix it up, is the idea. So I have a video on the YouTube channel titled 170 plus LSAT logical reasoning strategy. And I go through how you can use this very example to cover a wide variety of different question types. So again, 170 plus LSAT logical reasoning strategy. I go through this with several different question types. I'm just covering weaken and strengthen right now. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.